talk this morning is light, and it's partially based on this book, more David's than mine, but it's partially based on this book. That's where the idea came from. And it was interesting, Mark said he was looking around this week, and I've been looking around this week too, as we've known we were going to talk about the light, at how the weather can't even make up its mind if it wants to show light as gray and rainy, or if it wants to show light as sunny and bright and clear. But either way, whatever it is, we are talking about the light today.
Well, we're not speaking of physical characteristics of light, like in scientific studies to determine the speed of light or how light moves or how light interacts with other options. We're talking about more of a spiritual aspect of light. But it's kind of ironic today when I put on my shirt and I reach my pocket and here are my sunglasses. I've been looking for these for a year. And today we're talking about light, and there they are.
Guess we'll have to wear orange more often.
And I looked out, it was raining, I said, well, I guess I don't need them. And we walked out to come here, and the sun was shining. Maybe I do need them. The light is always there whether we know it or not. So we're talking about more of a metaphysical light. We're talking or seeking a more transcendental quality of light. It's consciousness itself, and has more quantum nature. It's an energy, and as an energy, it can take on physical parameters to remain in a more undifferentiated state. It can pinpoint like a spotlight or flood the entire environment around us, or await our level of perception, as Mark said, to come into our awareness. Spiritual mental qualities of light are all exactly that: feeling, thoughts, inner experiences, the metaphysical essence of what light means. We use a lot of words to describe that. One was on the screen this morning: divine spark, cosmic fire, illumination, awakening, awareness, radiation, enlightenment, consciousness, transcendence, understanding, that's a good one, and revelation. All those things that seem to come to us in moments when we need them. It's like that comic strip with the guy sitting with a light bulb over his head. As soon as he has an idea, the light bulb lightens up, and he's like, ah, I see light. The divine idea has always been available, it's always been there. But sometimes we feel like we're stumbling around in the dark room looking for things to make sense of where we are and what we're doing. Suddenly we find a switch, we flip the switch and we go, oh, aha. We have aha moments. Those are moments of divine light flowing to and through us. The mind is quite often muddled with the infinite realm of possibilities. So many things happening at one time. Abundance again, as Mark said. And sometimes all that has little relevance to us until we creatively embody the concepts and the ideas through choice, belief, and faith, and shedding a light on that which we actually do desire and bringing that into manifestation. Not only shedding a light on it, we are putting it in the influence of divine light and letting it go through the law into manifestation. Ernest Holmes says, light is the divine stuff of which we are made. You might see it everywhere and in all things. Symbolically, we must think a lot about light. I do not know exactly how to put it in words, but everything must become light. There is nothing outside this light. Everything exists in it. Even though it may not appear to exist, it is there just the same. Some fascinating statements. The most fascinating to me is Ernest Holmes actually said, I do not know exactly how to put it in words. Ernest Holmes, I think, is one of the most fascinating, has the most fascinating ability of anyone I know to put things into words and to explain things. And so when I read that, I did not exactly know how to put it into words. I thought, wow, that's the most unique Ernest Holmes quote I think I've ever read. He said, we should never try to visualize this light or make it appear. As Jesus said, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. The kingdom of God is within you. The light energy of the universe is within you at all times. times. You cannot possibly separate yourself from it. Metaphysically, you are God, and physically, you are God in expression.
And most interesting for me in that part was the idea that while he's saying, I don't exactly know how to put it into words, he put it into words saying everything exists in light. You just said it. There it is. Everything exists in light. So I would like to take a moment to talk about the shadow side of the light, because in our humanity we absolutely have those moments. Those shadow side ideas are the ideas that we would call less than feeling the positivity of life. And the shadow side is a great teacher. So at times, because of our humanity, we enter into it, but let's also realize that it's always for a period of time. We always come out of it. We always come back into what we perceive as the light as opposed to the shadow side. And so in realizing that, we can bring ourselves to the point where when we recognize that we're entering into the shadow side, we can do so in grace and giving ourselves space. Giving ourselves space to actually look at what is going on and what might this shadow idea have come to reveal through me or to help me grow in myself. As we do this, we're able to more completely step into that shadow side of our light being with more faith and a greater understanding that this too shall pass. And as we do that, we surely return to the light. And when we come back into the light awareness, the happy side, the joy side of life, not that the other side can't be also, but that takes a little practice sometimes. So sometimes it might be a while before we're able to actually do that, but we can. But once we come back to that place, surely we come with greater understanding and surety about our convictions and beliefs in life. So without the darkness in our lives, we may not fully be able to appreciate the light. The darkness is part of life, just as the light is. And so learning to love our shadow side is important. Someone wrote, "The dance between darkness and light will always remain. The stars and the moon will always need the darkness to be seen." And that reminds me of times in my own life when I've been out in the middle of the ocean or out of the city, away from the city lights, and looking up at the sky and how much more beautiful it seems to be, how much more expansive it seems to be. The stars have greater clarity and the moon has more vibrancy. And I think that that's true for us also in our life. I think that's a great analogy, that when we are able to sit in the darkness and allow and open up to the greater possibility of light action within our lives, we have greater clarity, and therefore it guides us toward a more beautiful experience of life. And so it's wise for us to, from time to time, remove ourselves from the busyness of life and just sit and be with ourselves. Just go within and be still. When we experience our inner light, what we are really doing is recognizing who we truly are. We're recognizing our truth, and that's inspirational. Marianne Williamson wrote, "Light is to darkness what love is to fear. In the presence of one, the other disappears." That's really beautiful. So what Holmes was saying when he was saying everything exists in light, and that includes you, is that light is reality, and darkness is the absence of that reality.
And you could say that in that reality, there is no such thing as an absence of light. Look at a simple mathematical proposition. God is all that is, and God is light. So therefore, all that is light. All that is light. Even in the shadows and the apparent darkness, God is all that is, so therefore God-like energy is there as well. So under a rock on the dark side of the moon is divine light, showing up and expressing as that rock, being God, expressing in that place. And so therefore there must be divine light there, there must be divine life there. Holmes often uses the metaphor of planting a seed in the creative soil of the law. The plant was in the seed before the seed was in the ground. We use that quite often in terms of spiritual mind treatment and the idea of planting our ideas and our belief systems into the universal law and letting them manifest so that they appear before us and we get to experience them. The seed, the idea, the concept of that which we wanted to experience was always there. We just chose to plant it into law, to plant it into the creative soil and then let it materialize before us. As we enter into the light, our conscious awareness increases. And the more we step into the light, the more we're aware of our oneness with all that is. Ernest Holmes says, gradually there is recognition of the other as the one, and then there is understanding that there is only one, and realization that we are not in it, or of it, or with it. We are it. We are the light, as Jesus said. Holmes says each of us should seek that beam of light within and follow it to the great light, the light that is in everything. We must acquiesce to it and surrender all that has made us unhappy, all that has isolated us from it. Only then can God fully pronounce himself through us and in us and personalize himself as us. We let the divine flow in and through us. We let it be and let it shine as us into the world. God is the light of the world, and God shining through us is us shining God into the world.
Beautiful. So maybe you, like me, have had some deeply personal experiences with the light and with your feelings around the light, or your imagination using the light. And we can purposefully do it, although I noticed that David shared that Ernest Holmes said, do not purposefully try to pull up this light. But I think that there are times in our life when we are more open and receptive to light experiences and less with the physicality of life. And I had the first one that I recall having for myself was when I was at dance camp. When I was about 20 years old, I was at dance camp, and I used to work 3 jobs so that I could take 2 months off in the summer to go to this dance camp. And it was a healthy, really healthy, natural environment with the food and the workouts and the meditation, and that was my first opportunity to experience meditation was when I was 20. And during the days, we would spend approximately 10 or 12 hours dancing. And if you've ever taken a ballet class for an hour, you know it's strenuous. It's a lot of hard work. It may look absolutely graceful and floaty, but that's because of the hard work that went into it prior to that. So it takes a lot of energy to be in that place, a lot of physical energy to be in that place. And I had said that it was the first time I'd experienced meditation, and I think I shared recently that when we first did it, I had no idea what it was, and when they said meditation and go into meditation, and everybody's closing their eyes, and I'm closing my eyes, and then I'm just kind of peeking to see what's going on. Nothing. Everyone's just sitting there on the floor with their hands in their lap and just sitting there. And I soon realized that we would be sitting like that for 20 minutes each morning. And it was eye-opening, and it definitely opened, literally, or eye closing. It was allowing me to release a lot of energy from childhood and bring to the table an openness to the oneness of life that was. And what happened for me was that I started seeing yellow light, and I didn't tell anyone that I was seeing it because I wasn't quite sure what it was, but it was really nice. It was very warm and comforting, but I knew at the same time that it had to do with my instructor. Now, how I knew that was just in the one mind, and my mind connecting to it, because there was no indication, nothing even after further investigation, that could have possibly led me to realizing what was going on with her. But I knew that this yellow light had to do with her. And after a while, the light got so bright that I would literally have to open my eyes to ground myself back into not just floating away. And so I decided, you know, I'm going to share this with her. She's much older, much wiser. She's obviously been meditating longer than I have. I wonder if it's connected to that. I don't know. So I went to her room and I told her, I said, this might sound a little crazy. I've never heard of it before, but I'm seeing a lot of bright lights. And every time I close my eyes, it's just all yellow and brilliant yellow, almost blinding. And I said, and this is going to maybe sound even crazier, but it has something to do with you. And she said, oh, honey, it's not crazy at all. And she was very keenly aware, and she said, come in and sit down. And she explained to me that she had recently been diagnosed with cancer. And I never did get, she lived in Los Angeles, I never did get to ask her if she ever went to the Whittier Church or studied Ernest Holmes, but I've always felt like she did, because she was so new thought, and she was so calming for me, and she was like, there's nothing for you to do, just allow it to be, and whatever comes through to you, that's what you're meant to receive, and thank you for holding me in the yellow light. And I was like, sure, okay. And I went away and just continued to let it be what it was. But it was my first experience with understanding that I'm that powerful. Now, I used to sit in nature as a child up on the top of the slide out by the swimming pool, because we lived in the mountains of Vermont and they were all around and gorgeous. And I used to sit up there and just know that there was one life. But I had never until this moment connected myself to being a center of power within that one life. I just thought it was out there somewhere. I knew the oneness was there, so I was part of it. But I didn't really realize until then that I could direct it. And we are all that powerful. So whatever is going on in our life, we are that light, as David said, and we can therefore direct it for good.
So the question arises, and particularly through that story, of whether we see and then understand, or if we understand and then see. Are we actually creating those things which we believe, or are we believing those things that we see? You know, which came first, the egg or the chicken? Generally speaking, in terms of universal light, they both are happening at the same time. And so we have an awareness of something, and so therefore we are able to see it. In Science of Mind, one of our basic principles is we hold belief systems and then we allow them to manifest. But it is also true that the manifestation happens, and then we're actually physically able to see it and experience it in a new way. So both of those things are happening conversely at the same time. Conversely and simultaneously. Thank you. Perfect word. It takes on the, if light takes on the characteristic of a particle or a physical entity, it must behave like a billiard ball, and it's going to bounce against or into anything that's around it and other particles. But if light is energy, it can flow through and around obstacles. Light, as the true level of energy that it is like radioactivity. It's like radio waves, can flow through walls and objects to get to its, well, not even to its destination, but through its destination. I guess it's very more clear. Light is never stationary. It is always actively flowing. not just passing through, but actually being all that it is passing through, actually being all that is. So it's a little challenging to see the true essence of light, because it never really stops for us to be able to look at it. French physicist Louis de Broglie says, in every atom there is a pattern of waves. Thinking in these terms, we believe that underlying all of the light waves seen and unseen, all the sound waves heard and unheard, all the gravity waves felt and unfelt, there undulates another vast and mysterious ocean of atomic particle waves. It is in the constantly shifting patterns of this atomic surf that the fundamental chemistry and physics of our living is expressed. The light energy of the universe is us, and is how we experience life, and is how we experience ourselves within this life experience.
So in these experiences of understanding as an educator in elementary school, I think my job is more than to help children learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I think it goes into the aspect of helping them to develop their confidence and their belief in themselves. And often you will hear a child say, "I just can't do this, I'm no good." And redirecting that idea within their own mind, I will quite often tell my students that your brain will believe whatever you tell it. So don't tell your brain that. Tell your brain how brilliant you are. And recently when I said that again, I had a student say, "Don't you think you have that backwards? Don't you really mean that we believe what our brain says?" And I was reminded how much our society believes that whatever has come to me, that's what must be so. Rather than, no, I can make so what I want to make so in my own life. And so realizing that whatever we're telling ourselves, we are creating for ourselves. And I think that we each do that. So seeing means that we are in the light. And we want to see ourselves, each one of us, see ourselves in form, in confidence, in situations, in conversation, in the light that we really want to be, and not the light that is of the dark side, unless that's what you really want to create. So Science of Mind teaches that through universal mind, our dominant thoughts and belief systems manifest. And so using that light to see yourself in all your perfection is invaluable. The Bible says, "As you believe, so it is done unto you." And Ernest Holmes says, if one sees only unloveliness in others, and I'm going to add or self, it is because unloveliness is a strong element in himself. The light he throws on others is generated in his own soul, and he sees them as he chooses to see them. So if anything's going on, you might want to see it differently within your own self.
Ernest Holmes says exactly that. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. We see things according to the belief systems that we project onto the environment around ourselves, and then see it manifest, and knowing that that is something that I have created. It's part of my belief system. Ernest Holmes says there has to be a state of consciousness that exercises its authority at the level of our perception of it. There is a consciousness around us, working through us and as us, in cooperation with us, to create that which we experience. And so it doesn't only work by authority, but by its very nature. If God is creative and God is all that is, and we are of God, then therefore we are creative. We create exactly the same way that God does. So there is a consciousness that exercises its authority and its nature at the level that we are able to perceive it.
Beautiful. So speaking of that perception, we're going to end today with Ernest Holmes' experience of the light, or one, I should say, of his experiences of the light near the end of his life. And it took place when he was giving the address or the message at the Whittier Church. I know you two know this story really well too, because all Science of Mind students come in to learn this story. So I'm going to provide the setting for us. So he's giving the talk at the Whittier Church as they are dedicating their newly built church. And I thought that was a commonality for us because we have our precious Abbey of abundance that is going to be our future home also. And then it goes on at the end of this book. This was actually a recording. They recorded this speech, but at the end of after the experience, Ernest Holmes spoke with one friend about this experience that he had. And so the friend used the recording to put together what Ernest Holmes had experienced. So he was talking about how our movement grows and expands very rapidly, because once people step into it, it's challenging to believe anything else. It just makes so much sense. He was talking about how we are a teaching and not a preaching entity. And he was talking about how fortunate each of the people there were to have one another, to go through this experience together, to support each other right where they are. He was talking about his personal conviction in the teaching. And he was saying how it had developed and grown and blossomed and flourished over time. And how later in life, during this time in life, he had so much what he called inward conviction. And then he paused, and there was a change in his voice, and he started just staring off into the distance. And the rest of his words that he shared were just staring off into one space. And he was talking at first about co-joining our consciousness with the eternal guarantee of the universe. And it moved into him talking about the secret place of the Most High and the one enveloping light of consciousness. And then he kind of paused for quite a lengthy time, continued staring, and he said, "I see it." And his voice was dynamic. He paused again, and he said, "Oh God." And he paused again, and he said, "The veil is thin between. We do mingle with the hosts of heaven. I see it, and I shall speak no more." And he turned and he went and sat down. And so he absolutely was recognizing the light of life as one entity. And he knew he was of that light, powerful. And each one of us is of that light, able to experience that light in every given moment. And so wherever you are on the path, whether there's something weighing pretty heavy on the dark side of your life, bring it to the light. Give yourself the grace, give yourself the space to sit in the darkness with it and let it be okay. And if you are in that space where I know everything you guys just talked about today, then enjoy putting it to use in your life and having happy experiences. And so it is.
So, yeah.
Let